the winter green, the juniper, the cornflower and the chicory. Well, all of the world...
I'd been living in Cardiff, Wales, for 7 years. I was studying for a humanities PhD, a pursuit guaranteed to make me poor both now and in the future. I moved there with a girl as a teenager. It hadn't been going well for about the last 3 years, and the eventual breakup was acrimonious. Given the last few years of downtrodden misery, I was in no mood to jump into anything approaching a relationship. I was, however, in the mood for meeting new people. While some people might be content to lay off for a while, to take some time, maybe get to know themselves again, I was not one of those people. I've never been a huge fan of myself, so I didn't feel like getting to know myself better would cheer anyone up. And so it was that I launched into a period of several months that I will tell my grandchildren was their grandfather's wild time. There were some women, most of them hugely inadvisable. One girl waited until we were in bed together before telling me that she hadn't taken her medication for the last week, and so she wasn't really her right now. Another girl came with her own personal stalker, which led to situations like him sobbing against her bedroom door while both of us were naked inside. There was this one girl, Rachel. She was different from the rest. Better looking, too. We had a mutual friend, and we'd managed not to meet each other, despite being in the same Facebook photos and attending the same events. On our mutual friend's going away party, the last possible time we could have met each other, we ended up sitting next to each other in a bar. She was an amazing person, in both body and soul. She too had recently come out of an 8-year relationship. She was smart, beautiful, and her taste in music was better than mine. We talked for hours, to the point where people assumed we had come to the party together. It took me a long while of trying to sweet talk her on Facebook chat, which obviously is the tool of the real Lothario, before she would agree to meet up with me again. She assumed I was simply trying to be her friend, talking to her every day, which is a very stupid thing for a smart girl to think. At one point, I tried inviting her out for a milkshake, which sounds like a date that 2 9-year-olds might go on. I didn't say I was actually any good at being a Lothario. I'm not. I'm kind of a timid womanizer. Eventually, we met up like adults might, at a bar, and she gave in to these charms, whatever they might be. We embarked on a no-strings relationship that we kept secret from our several mutual friends. Said charming and overwhelmingly beautiful girl would mainly come round to my house during the daytime, as I spent my days at home writing my thesis. In fact, she would take a lunch break to walk the 20 minutes to my house. The second time she came to see me during lunch, she brought with her a bacon sandwich and a Kit Kat, which meant that she had read me like a book. We developed a routine of sorts, in which once or twice a week she would visit during lunch. We would take it in turns to cook bacon sandwiches, and then we would eat these sandwiches while entirely naked and watching an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Eventually, she bought a bicycle just so she could get to my house more quickly. She called this Special Bike. We both called these lunches Special Lunch. Everything about these weeks and months is very special to me. Special Bike, as an aside, was stolen by someone from outside my house. Clearly, only an enemy of love would do such a thing. Talking of love, we barely even noticed that we had fallen headlong into it. After maybe 3 months, she took me aside to tell me that she loved me for the first time. The paranoid side of my brain decided she was declaring the end of our no-strings relationship, which illustrates how precarious the whole thing was. 1 month later, the news came that she had landed a job in Dallas, Texas, the well-paying professional job that she had been working towards for the 8 years of being a student, and she would be leaving in 3 months. We decided to completely ignore the looming expiry dates on our relationship and instead have her and her son move in with me as their lease was up. Even though I knew this girl would be leaving in a little over 12 weeks, I went to her house and I helped her pack up all of her son's toys, her school books, and her clothes. These months are a blur of us behaving in a manner not befitting adults, building forts, eating cereal at 4 a.m., simply refusing to go to work, or whatever it is that passes for work for 2 graduate students in their late 20s. I played computer games, and I hung out and I talked sports with her son, and we enrolled him in the local elementary school down the road. Before either of us were aware what was happening, she had a visa and plane tickets. She flew out of the country on New Year's Eve 2010 to start life anew a quarter of the world away. Bereft, a man facing a New Year's celebration and the permanent loss of 2 loved ones, I turned to alcohol. I have absolutely no recollection of any events after 8 p.m. that evening, although I am told I was in a bar. I woke up the following morning on my own couch with no memory of how I got there, fully dressed with my head underneath the Christmas tree the 3 of us had decorated together, by now somewhat ragged and old. I would probably never love anyone again, I decided somewhat dramatically. Upon the realization that alcohol had, as always, solved nothing at all, I did a silly thing. I booked a flight to Dallas, Texas, a flight my no-strings-attached female acquaintance was not expecting me to take. By the time she had landed in Dallas, the ticket was bought. 2 weeks later, I got off the plane to meet a woman who, though delighted to see me, was unconvinced that my hangover-fueled romantic gesture had actually solved anything, as I still had to leave the country. I spent 89 days, one short of the yearly limit of 90 for tourists, doing everything a couple would do, setting up life in a new country. I spent 5 weeks back in the UK, sleeping on a friend's couch, before it was clear to me that, to use the delightful British phrase, it was time to shit or get off the pot. I decided to shit. I bought a ring that day with the $60 or so that I could raise above the cost of a flight, and I flew out to propose to the woman that I loved. After 4 hours of intense negotiations with the US Immigration Services at the Chicago border, I was allowed in with the promise I would not return to the United States on a tourist visa for the next 2 years. The idiots. Little did they know I planned to return on a residency visa. After 5 weeks of furious planning, we were married in Las Vegas. We had known each other for a little over a year. Why Vegas? Well, isn't that where all Americans go to get married? We chose the chapel because it was beautiful and not at all tacky. And because it would broadcast the wedding live on the internet. So everyone back home could watch it. My new stepson was my best man, and he gave a speech at the modest wedding reception thanking me for being his new dad. My no-strings-attached journey, crazy as it was, took me 5,000 miles around the world and gave me a soulmate I love and a stepson I adore. I've never been happier in my life. There are no men sobbing outside my door. And my wife finally accepts that a milkshake is a perfectly sensible date for adults to go on. I wouldn't change anything that has happened to me in the last 4 years.